Soprano's world runs on lines. Lines between business and home. Lines between talk and action. Lines between what you can do to a man and what you must never do to his family. Coco Cogliano crossed one of those lines when he harassed Meadow Soprano. On paper, it looks like a small moment, a crude comment, a finger on a cheek, a bad smile in a nice restaurant. But it set off a chain of cause and effect that shows how respect, fear, and fatherhood collide in the final stretch of the show. To understand why Koko did it and whether Tony's response was justified, you have to look at the pressure cooker around New York and New Jersey, the way status works in their world, and the very simple truth that even tough men become something else when their children are hurt. Start with Koko. He's not a boss. He's not a strategist. He's a hanger-on for the New York side, a guy who lives on the edges of other men's power. People like him don't create plans, they sniff the wind, and try to look strong when the big dogs are watching. In the late part of the series, Phil Leotardo is building up anger against Tony's crew. Every meeting, every split, every tiny insult feels like an open wound to Phil. That mood changes the air. When a boss is seething, the lower guys imitate it. They push boundaries to prove they get it. Koko is exactly the sort of man who would read that mood and try to score cheap points. He's crude, he's careless, and he's looking for a chance to show he's fearless in public. That's one layer. Another layer is the target, Meadow. Meadow is not just Tony's daughter. She's the part of him that is trying to be normal, educated, outside the life. She's the family's hope that the next generation won't carry the same blood debt that the parents carry. But she's also, in a very public sense, untouchable because the unwritten rules say wives and kids are off limits. When a man in that world wants to send a message, he doesn't always go for a gun. Sometimes he goes for an insult that everybody hears. It's cheap, it's loud, it's humiliating, and it dares the other side to respond. Harassing Meadow in a nice room in front of people is a way of saying, "We don't respect you. We don't respect your house. We can reach inside your life." It's not clever. It's not even that brave. But it's a dirty, simple way to test Tony's limits. There's also something very small and ugly in Koko himself. He objectifies women. He tries to show off with cheap, vulgar lines. He treats being a gangster like a free pass to act like a king in public spaces. We've seen men like him across the series, men who enjoy scaring regular people because it costs them nothing. In those moments, they are not thinking 3 moves ahead. They are thinking about the thrill of making someone blush or freeze. Mix that with the charged politics between New York and New Jersey, and you get what happened, an opportunist insult dressed up as a power move. Now, why does it matter so much? Because it hits Tony in the only place where he has a clear, true north. Tony is inconsistent in 100 ways. He's ruthless and soft. He wants out but can't leave. He lies to himself, then to everyone else. But when it comes to his kids, his line is clear and bright. From the pilot to the final run, he treats their safety as a sacred wall. The man who can debate money, pride, and revenge will not debate this. Meadow is his heart. And remember the timing. The family is already under stress. AJ is sinking into depression. Tony's leadership is being tested by New York. His marriage is worn down by years of lies and pain. He's a man trying to hold his house up with 2 hands while the roof is cracking. When Meadow tells him what happened, it's not just an offense, it's a siren. So, was Koko's harassment a single act of personal creepiness, or was it a message from New York? The truth is, it can be both. On the surface, it's a small-time bully being gross. Under the surface, the bully chose a target that turns a gross moment into a political one. In their world, little things are often tests. If Tony swallows it, people talk. They say he's slipping. They say he's scared of Phil. They say you can mess with his family and he'll send a polite complaint. That kind of talk spreads faster than cash. It changes how people sit at a table with you. It changes what they dare to take from you the next time. Tony knows this to his bones. He's lived on both sides of that equation. He knows a leader who accepts a public disrespect is halfway to losing his crew. Tony's answer is instant and direct. He finds Koko and destroys him with his hands and the butt of his gun. He doesn't send a warning through a third party. He doesn't ask for a sit down first. He chooses speed, pain, and spectacle. He turns Koko's mouth into a lesson. It's not the smart play if you measure only by strategic safety. It risks war with Phil. It risks New York treating this as an act of war. It risks legal trouble. But inside the code they live by, an unwritten code that says family is sacred, children are off limits. Tony's move makes brutal sense. He is not even arguing. He is declaring a boundary in the only language that will be heard by men like Koko, immediate punishment in public form. Let's slow down and measure the decision across 3 frames: morality, mob code, and strategy. Morally, most people will feel Tony's rage at once. Think of a father hearing that a grown man touched his daughter's face, blocked her path, made crude sexual remarks, and tried to scare her. Even outside the mob, even in a normal world with police and courts, many parents would feel the impulse to march over and make it stop with their own hands. In that sense, Tony's reaction maps onto a simple human truth: protect your kid, restore her sense of safety, and show the world that she is not alone. It's a blunt, real thing. And the show lets us see it with no filter. He is not calculating coolly. He is a father first. The beating is shocking, but the feeling that drives it is understandable to a wide audience who may not accept his life but can understand this kind of love. Now, the mob code. They don't write it down, but they quote it all the time. No families, no women. We keep business separate. And yet, again and again, we see the code broken whenever fear or pride gets too high. Even then, the appearance of the code matters. Men who break it try to look like they didn't. If the code still has any force, then crossing the line with Meadow can't be left as a warning letter. It needs a price. Tony's beating of Koko is a way to say the code still exists and has teeth. It also speaks to Tony's own identity. He wants to believe he is a certain kind of leader, the man who can stop chaos from reaching his kitchen table. By punishing Koko hard, he performs the identity he wants to protect. Finally, strategy. This is where the answer gets tricky. Was Tony's move smart? In the narrow sense of war planning, no. He hits a made guy, or at least a frontline New York associate tied to Phil's camp at a delicate time. He does it without clearing it through any channel. He does it personally, leaving witnesses and blood and humiliation. That gives Phil a story to tell his own soldiers: look at what Tony did. He beat our guy half to death. This is why we have to hit them. It offers Phil a cause that's easy to rally around because it's concrete. It also closes the door on certain peace moves that were still barely possible at that point. If you ask, how do you avoid a wider war? Then Tony's move looks reckless. But there is another strategic layer that's less obvious. Sometimes you avoid war by making a small war right now, in the right place, in the right size, so that a bigger war doesn't explode later. In that view, Tony is not just venting. He's drawing a red line at the only spot where a red line must be bright. He is saying, you can fight me man to man over money or turf, but if you touch my daughter, the fight is different. To many men in that world, the signal will read. Even enemies will nod at it. They will understand that if they let Koko's move stand, then the arena gets poisoned. Instead of clean lines between work and private life, every dinner becomes a show of force. The beating is ugly, but it tries to restore the boundary. Still, the timing matters. The New York side is already spoiling for a fight. Phil is not a man who gives grace. He holds grudges like a bank holds debt. He sees Tony's violence not as a response to a violation, but as an opportunity to paint Tony as the problem. So while Tony might be justified in principle, the real-world cost is high. The very next moves in the story show that cost. New York goes for the throat. The war spills into the streets. People die who would otherwise be alive. You can trace a dotted line from a finger on Meadow's cheek to blood in a train shop and a machine gun fire in a parking lot. The show wants us to feel both truths at once, that Tony, as a father, did what many fathers would do, and that Tony, as a boss, lit a fuse in a room already filled with gas. Let's look closer at Koko's intention, because intention matters for judging. Was he acting on Phil's orders? The show never tells us that. There is no clear command like, go scare the Jersey boss's kid. It looks more like what happens in many groups where the top man is angry. The lower men act out the anger without being told. They perform loyalty through cruelty. Koko wants to look like he belongs with the wolves. He wants to feel big in front of a young woman who should be out of his reach. He also may be drunk, or at least riding the high of being connected. In other words, even if there was no formal plan, the climate allowed it. There's another subtle piece. Meadow's boyfriend is Patrick Parisi, the son of Patsy, who is on Tony's side. That gives the moment even more weight. Koko is not only disrespecting Tony's family, he's messing with a relationship that ties two Jersey families closer together. Harassing Meadow in that setting rings like a bell across both trees. It says, your kids are not safe even inside your own circle. That could easily set off not just Tony's rage, but the rage of other fathers around him. And it forces Tony to show he can protect bonds inside his organization. If he doesn't, then even his allies will start to doubt, whether putting their kids near his kids is wise. Could Tony have gone to Butchie DeConcini or another New York captain to demand Koko be disciplined? Maybe, but the response would have been slow, grudging, and probably weak. And it would have turned a moral question, how dare you touch my daughter, into a committee problem. In their culture, that's a bad look. The idea that a man has to ask other men for permission to protect his daughter would read as weak. Tony knows how that movie ends. When other people decide the fate of your daughter's dignity, you've already given up too much. Now, was the level of force justified? That's the hardest piece for a wide audience, and it's fair to debate it. Tony could have confronted Koko with words, made a point, and walked away. He could have slapped him around lightly and sent him limping. He could have demanded a formal apology in front of witnesses and called it a day. Those are all options that might have sent a signal without spilling so much blood. But they also would have left the core problem unaddressed. Koko's act used Meadow's face and body as a stage for his status play. A light answer would have turned Tony into a co-star in that same ugly theater. The brutal answer breaks the stage. It makes the cost of that kind of show too high for the next clown who tries it. So where does that leave us on the big question? Why did Koko harass Meadow? Because he is a small man trying to look big in a culture that rewards cruelty when the boss is angry. Because public disrespect is a cheap weapon against a rival leader. Because he misread the cost of crossing a line that, even in their violent world, is supposed to be bright. And was Tony's response justified? As a father, yes, it's an honest, human answer to a violation that shouldn't be negotiated away. Inside the mob code, yes, he defended the last sacred boundary with decisive force. As a strategist, it's a near fatal risk. He poured fuel on a fire that was already burning and gave his enemies a banner to march under. The truth is that the scene works because all three layers are true at once. The father is right. The boss is reckless. The world is sick in a way that makes even a right act dangerous. Tony chooses the only kind of justice he believes will hold in his world, and it costs him. But doing nothing would have cost him too, perhaps even more. If you want an easy answer, the show won't give you one. It gives you a father's eyes, a leader's burden, and a street's cruel math, and asks you to sit with all of it. There's one last point worth making. When Tony beats Koko, he is also beating his own fear. Not just fear of New York, but fear of losing his family to the darkness he carries around. He can't save his son from despair with a beating. He can't save his marriage with a beating. He can't save his own soul with a beating. But here, finally, is something he can fix with his hands. A man tried to mark his daughter with shame, and Tony can mark the man instead. That gives him a short, powerful feeling of control in a season where he has been losing control piece by piece. The show doesn't celebrate this, it shows it. It lets us feel how a violent man mistakes power for safety. For one night, the house feels defended. For many nights after, the war gets worse. So the simple version is this: Koko harassed Meadow because he's crude and wanted to score points by disrespecting Tony where it hurts. Tony beat him because that's the only language that stops a man like that in their world, and because as a father he couldn't live with any other answer. It was justified in spirit and dangerous in effect. It saved a boundary at home and put everyone at risk outside the home. That's The Sopranos in one knot. Love protects, violence answers, and the bill always comes due.